people will look at what the top businesses in their category are doing, and they will take that as signals that they just need to do that too. And they will make decisions about how to position themselves and how to market themselves and how to brand themselves by trying to maybe not always copy, but be heavily inspired by those large companies.
Welcome to the Creative Chats podcast with MIke Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artists, makers, and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, MIke Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey friends, on today's episode, I have Emma Schermer Tamir, and she is the founder of Marketing by Emma. And in that business, she helps other businesses boost their sales and build their online brands. So today we talk a lot about marketing, but don't let that scare you. We have some pretty candid conversation today about the importance of not only knowing who your customers and clients are or need to be, but also knowing who you are as a business, as a person who is running a business. It's important to do the self-work and understand what your unique offer is, what your story is, and how that intersects with the people that you're serving. And regardless if you are just starting out or you've been at this business for a little bit, this episode, I'm sure, will inspire you to take some practical actions on really taking a second look maybe or a deeper look into what it is that you do, how it is that you do it, and who it is that you need to reach. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Emma Schermer Tamir. Well, Emma, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for hosting me. I'm really excited to dive into this topic and curiosity journey with you today about building a creative business.
Yeah, I love this. And so many people are in that place where they're like, I need information and I need inspiration and please help. And so I know today is going to be a great resource for people looking for some practical steps and some inspiration. And I'm also looking forward to learning more about you, your journey, your path, and how it is that you came into doing what you do today. So let's dive in. I love to ask the question early on in someone's childhood, like, was there a place where you could look to and say, this was an experience I had or a moment I had when I felt like, yes, I'm a creative person?
I feel like that was just a part of my being from the earliest recollections that I have. I mean, my family, when I was growing up, we lived in this almost like Frank Lloyd Wright style house, and there were all these different areas that served as the perfect stage. And so I think I just made my family watch for hours as I would put on these improvised dancing and singing extravaganzas. And I think that it's truly just part of my nature to be a creatively expressive human.
Yeah. It's funny because I think sometimes those experiences, they're formative for us. And even if we're not doing something that's directly tied to those activities, there's still something that we can trace back to that says, well, the way that I think about things, the way that I problem solve, the way that I am curious about certain things. Those foundations were laid even back then.
Mhm.
And that's what continues to draw us into more things, right? I mean, have you seen that as part of your own journey?
Yeah, I think because I'm a very cerebral person, I think about these things a lot. And one in particular that I've pondered quite a bit is, I guess, just to step back for a moment. So I have been running a copywriting agency for e-commerce businesses with my husband and business partner, Aries, for almost 8 years. And I've needed to both write myself for many different types of products. And then as we began to build a team, train other writers on how to write for other types of products. And I really liken getting into the creative zone necessary to capture a particular type of brand identity as preparing for a role as an actor would, and
Mm,
really studying like an actor to think about who am I on a deeper level, so where you're able to really tap into that emotional realm that transcends beyond just the superficialities of one particular set of interests, to be able to really find those commonalities that we can use to drive connection. And obviously, when you are doing something like copywriting, it's to help make a sale. But that preparation and the way that we go about really being able to foster connection is very much the same process.
yeah. And it's so empowering when you realize that there is that connection. And
Mhm.
even in your own approach, your own methodology, your process, when you're aware of those things, you can really do them with intention and purpose and then get even better results on things. And that's why, I love that you say, you're cerebral and you think about these things a lot, because I think sometimes, especially with creators, things that seem very intuitive often get overlooked and sometimes get undervalued, because it's like, well, doesn't everyone do this? Doesn't everyone think like this? Doesn't everyone, right? And so to stop and examine that, we can actually find really a superpower, if we're paying
Yeah.
attention.
Absolutely. I think even if it comes naturally to us, we still all want to be able to connect with our audience, whoever that may be, whether it's somebody that's admiring your artwork or watching a performance or reading something that you've written. And so if we're only stuck in our own minds and we're not thinking about who that other person is on the other side of that uh, connection, then we're not going to be able to have the desired outcome that we're looking for. And I think that's also why it's been so valuable for me to not only train people for my team, but also to educate others around the topics that I'm very knowledgeable about. I even taught English in Spain for a year. And I think
Oh,
all
wow.
of those experiences are great exercises to help you get out of your brain and be thinking about, okay, well, this is how I see things. How can I help this other person be able to align and see things from a similar perspective?
Yeah, yeah. Because so much of what we do as creators, it does happen in our heads. It's we come up with ideas and then we think about how to execute them, and then typically, I mean, sometimes we're working on a team or with collaborators, but so much of the process is solo, right? It's by ourselves, it's in our heads, and that can be a good thing, but it can also be a detriment to us when we can't get out of our heads. And then, like you said, think about who are the people who are going to interact with what it is that we create and how, right? And what's the story we're telling and how are we positioning ourselves? All those type of things, right?
Yes, and it changes so significantly once we try to monetize it, because there are different elements at play when there is that transactional realm that enters the arena. It's not just about creating something that people will like or enjoy or appreciate, but Now, if you are asking somebody to give you money for this thing, then it's also not just about what we like. We
Right.
have that other person that we need to be serving in some way.
Yeah. I would love to, if you're willing to go there, can you talk a little bit about how did you navigate that space? Like, and what did that look like for you to move into this? Like you're going, okay, I have this skill set, I have this passion, this interest. I want to make this into a business. How did that unfold for you? And how did you navigate the going from this being something of interest and maybe a passion to being, okay, this is actually a business people need to pay for. And like you just said, thinking about taking this and making sure that it meets the needs of other people, not just your own.
Mhm. So it's sort of I would say, a non-traditional
Yeah.
entrance into all
Most
of
have
this.
that. Yeah.
I was not the born entrepreneur who knew that I wanted to enter the business world. And I didn't even necessarily agree to starting this business. I had been doing some freelancing, but I was still primarily working for a health and wellness company doing sales and marketing for them. And I was needing to travel for events. And one event was in Austin, and I was gone for about 5 days. And that's where I learned that leaving my husband by himself for 5 days may mean that I come back to the seedlings of a business. So he understood that things with that company were running their course and that it wasn't going to be somewhere that I was wanting to stay for much longer. And he, at the time, really thought that writing was my main passion. And so he wanted to help bring this into being and give me a business where I could do what I loved doing, which it wasn't until about 2 years in that I told him, well, actually, I don't know that I love this kind of writing. And I don't know that I like that this is the passion that I want to be dedicating my life to. However, one of the really okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So essentially, he recognized that there was a lot of need for specialists who understood the American consumer and the um, all of the different elements that go into navigating how to create a winning product page for Amazon. And so that was really where we carved out our niche by getting super specific and serving e-commerce businesses that were looking to either launch new products or improve the performance of their existing products on Amazon. So it's highly technical, but still very creative work that requires a strong understanding of how to strategically position yourself and differentiate this a product, because unlike your own website where you have a captive audience, on Amazon all of your competitors are right there, and so you really need to be able to communicate why your product is the best choice in contrast to all of the other products that are out there. So we started doing this, and very quickly word spread, and we found ourselves at a junction of either I can just be the sole writer and we can be very selective with the clients that we take, or we can try to grow a team and turn this into more of a full business rather than me just freelancing. And so I felt like I didn't want to just be writing Amazon product pages all day. And it seemed like there was a real opportunity here. So despite not having any experience in hiring or managing or business operations or anything, we just threw ourselves into it and started figuring it out. And along the way, I actually realized that even though I was not passionate about writing product pages, I was really passionate about helping educate people around a lot of the concepts that are necessary to doing this effectively. And so what I really tapped into is as we began to grow the business was recognizing that one of the core ways that we could market ourselves, get our name out there, but also demonstrate why we are such a ideal partner to work with these businesses is by doing thought leadership. And so I started doing podcasts and webinars and speaking on stages. And that's actually where I feel like I'm able to stretch a lot of my creative muscles and feel very fulfilled while still building and growing and supporting this core business. So I feel like I jumped around quite a bit. I don't know if that trajectory fully made
Oh
sense,
yeah, totally.
but
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's more common, honestly, especially with creative people, is this sense of I have something I'm heading towards. And maybe it's accidental, right? But you throw yourself in, like you said, and I appreciate your just, transparency in sharing the story and kind of the behind the scenes, because I think that's as helpful a lot of times as what we lead with in either a service or in the more polished, if you will, presentation, because people get to see, oh, here's somebody who's a real person who has a journey that maybe looks a little bit like mine, and the specifics are different, but there's something universal in there. There's a thread that I can pull on and apply to my own experience and context right now that actually offers hope and offers some direction and some education. And so thank you for that, first off. But I will say, yeah, like I think it is very common to have this windy path of like, we have a general direction that we're heading in and we're doing things, but we're also having to be nimble enough to evolve and to recognize where change is needed, maybe within us, maybe within an organization, and to figure out what the next steps look like, right? What's the right next best step I can take? And with you doing that, having the ability to kind of hand some pieces off, hire, figure that whole piece out, as you said, not having experience in that, and that freeing you up to be able to do something that really lights you up of educating and speaking. I think that's such a valuable lesson in two things. One, listening to yourself, right? Because you weren't satisfied with going, okay, I'm just going to like stay here in this place and I can do this, but maybe I'm not really completely lighting up every time I'm doing this. And secondly, being open-handed enough to go, what is it that I need to do in this season, right? Where do I need to grow? Who do I need to invite in? And then everybody wins because other people get to be part of the process, right? The thing continues to grow and maybe people who bring other skill sets get in and you're freed up to do the things that you really feel more aligned with, right? I mean, that's a tremendous lesson in just you even sharing that part of your story. So thank you for that.
absolutely.
Is there something about education that, like, why is that important to you? Is that tied to something maybe more personal of your own story, even going back to a place where you felt like you needed access to information or education in something that was really helpful?
I think it's a few aspects. One is I'm just an insanely curious person. Like I I just want to know the why behind everything. And I would say that that is one of the biggest motivators for me with anything that I'm doing is that curiosity. But to me, it's not satisfying to just discover that and then keep it to myself. I
Mm,
feel like the end uh, sort of payout almost of that curiosity is being able to share that gift of what I've learned or how my perspective has changed or a connection that I've identified. Um, that sharing of that is what makes the curiosity so satisfying. I don't want to just squirrel all of that knowledge away
sure.
for myself. And I think that in some ways it's almost a culmination of all of these different parts of my journey all throughout my life. And so when I was younger, I was really drawn to the performing arts. When I was a kid, I would tell people that I want to be a singer and an actress. And I just was so performative. And so that was a part of me that I cultivated and that I in some ways lost a little bit of touch with as I went through my teenage years and then into my 20s. And so I feel like this is a reconnecting with that. There's
Mm.
also the piece of like I have had experience teaching and helping people see things from a different perspective. And especially if that's helping somebody solve a problem, I get a lot of joy and satisfaction from that. And so it also brings in that element. And then I think there's also, especially when you're on stage speaking, that's where I feel most in flow state, where there's the high stakes of this is happening live, regardless of what's transpiring. My goal is to help people be able to walk away from this feeling more empowered to do something or more clarified around an idea or excited about these new strategies that they can go and apply. And so that that element too is also frankly just fun for me.
Yeah, yeah. I love that answer. And isn't it great when you can see different parts of your life and different, perhaps, segments that don't seem like they're related, all of a sudden come together and go like, oh, that was actually training ground for me to be able to do this. Like you being involved with theater earlier on probably got you comfortable being on a stage. And then you not having to worry about that and going, okay, I want to get on a stage, I want to public speak, but I'm terrified of being on a stage. Like that was not a problem then, and you teaching English, right? For 4 years, the teaching of that and that lending itself to what you do as well. It's great when those pieces can come together like that and you figure out, oh, okay, this is what it looks like. And so often it's not something that is on a job description, right? It's not some
No.
role that's preformed, which is probably why entrepreneurship is so attractive to people like us. Like when that happens to go, oh, I wouldn't really consider myself an entrepreneur earlier on, but there are things about the journey and the process that actually lend itself really well to it, right? And you
Absolutely.
mentioned curiosity, which I love that as well, because I think that is something that unlocks so much. So I want to ask you, like, what are you curious about right now?
My gosh. Like I'm the kind of person who I go into a bookstore and one of my main feelings is sadness that I won't have enough life to read all the books that are there. But I think at the end of the day, I'm just really curious about people. Like the way, and this is where it a little bit intersects, well, a lot bit intersects back to my core business, which is why do we do the things that we do? Like
Mhm.
we are, on the one hand, we believe that we are such logical creatures. However, we demonstrate every single day that we do not operate by logic at all. Oftentimes we go against our best interests and do all these things that don't make any sense. And so I think human psychology is just endlessly fascinating to me.
Mm. Yeah. The thing about curiosity too is that it's not like you ever get to the end of it.
No,
There's always something new, there's always something more. And when you can be open to possibilities and you explore something, it can lead you someplace that you maybe never would have gone otherwise. And that can unlock a whole new segment of something or a whole new skill set or knowledge base. And so you can continue to evolve, continue to speak about new things. And even I'm sure that because you're speaking a lot of times, specifically, you mentioned like e-commerce and with Amazon, with an entity like that where things are based on technology and technology is always changing. I'm sure that there's a fair amount of, well, this is what used to be the way, but now it's this because of certain things that they've implemented. Is that true?
I would say yes and no. So
Okay.
it's the tactics change, but what I really love and what I'm always looking for are what are those core foundational elements that are unchanging, that no matter what technology is around or what particular strategies you're employing, those are almost like the accessories that you put on once you're clear about those foundations. And I think that's what's so interesting. And so, like, for example, right now, there's obviously so much happening in the world of AI.
Right.
And that is wonderful for many reasons, but it is also creating a new set of challenges for businesses to overcome. One of those being that there's just so much that everybody is creating now because it makes it so easy and it reduces almost all of the friction that there was before in whether it's creating blogs or videos or audio. I mean, you can use AI to create everything.
Yeah.
But just because there's a lot of it, it doesn't mean that it's good. And
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that it's stuff that people want to engage with. And so it's creating a lot of noise, but it's not necessarily creating a lot of new opportunities for driving connection.
Hmm.
And so it creates a unique challenge because those who want to be still resonating with their target audience need a way to stand out against a backdrop of so much noise. To be able to use AI in an effective way that is still going to allow them to be competitive, but then to allow some of that technology to be able to free up more time and mental capital to invest in that deeper strategy work that's necessary to figure out how to stand out. And so that's actually where we're seeing this interesting thing situation play out where there's more AI created content and just noise, and that it is creating a stronger appetite for authenticity and real
Hmm.
connection.
Yeah.
And so it's actually in many ways requiring that people invest even more time and thought and effort into that deeper work than perhaps they were even doing previously, which might sound counterintuitive, but that's really where you're going to be able to stand out and foster those relationships amidst all of the hubbub that's
Hmm.
happening.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I've heard that too in terms of from other people who are in the AI sphere saying authenticity and more human touch is going to be the thing that is the differentiation, and being willing to go there, being willing to be vulnerable in some places and show the humanness of things will actually be an attractor.
Mhm.
And in the scope of this conversation, if somebody's listening and they're thinking, okay, I love where the conversation is going, but what are some practical things that I can do in that regard? What would you offer somebody who's going like, give me some next steps or something? Like what help me actually put something into action. Like what would you suggest for people?
Sure. So almost all what I mentioned that I really love the core foundational concepts because I think that those are unchanging, but I also think that that's where that strategic edge is going to be unveiled with the way that things are changing right now. And so, one place to start is to gain really solid clarity about who your target customer is. And this is a really difficult thing to do because, especially, well, I shouldn't say especially, whether you are just starting out and you have zero customers or you have a multi-billion-dollar company, it's really hard to do this piece because while you're saying who your customer is, you also need to be saying who your customer is not. And that feels like it's restrictive and it's limiting, but really what it's doing is it's going to allow you to be able to speak more clearly and more compellingly to that person. And the broader that you make it and the more general it becomes, the more that you dilute your message and the more you're just going to fade into the competitive environment and really lose your ability to stand out and connect with the people that you want to connect with. And so in marketing, we would call that a customer customer avatar, which is essentially a customer profile that is really, really specific. So that by the time that I've finished reading that, I can clearly picture this person to a T. And I'm not just talking about physicality, I'm also talking about interests, about where they live, all of those elements that would really help me be able to understand what cultural references would resonate with them. If they're into music, what kind of music are they into? And that may even inform if I'm creating content, video content on TikTok or Instagram, what kind of background music I'm choosing, and do they have a sense of humor? And if so, what kind? And what are the things that are keeping them up at night? All of those details are going to give you points of potential opportunity for connection that you can then utilize as you think about ways that you can get in front of and then drive connection with those people. And so it's a really, really important exercise. It is something that you can use AI to do to at least begin building out that framework, because it can be a more daunting task. So if you go to your favorite AI chat tool, be it ChatGPT or Claude or whatever other one is your preference, and you can prompt it to giving it information about if you have any customer information, the demographic information already, feeding that in. If you don't, then who you think it might be, and information about your business, and then asking it to create a customer avatar based on those parameters. It will give you something to begin working from and iterating off of. So I wouldn't say just use that verbatim, but it's a starting place to help eliminate some of that anxiety that comes with staring at a blank page and not
Yes.
knowing which direction to go.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I've had conversations in creative coaching with some people where it's like they're in the beginning and they're like, I don't have enough data points to know who my avatar is, because maybe I've sold some things, but there really doesn't seem to be commonalities between people, or I'm not really sure what that looks like. And so I think because it seems so daunting of a task, people avoid it. And yet, like you said, it's better to start someplace and know that this will probably evolve. This will probably change the more data points you get and the more specific you hone in on something. And that whole thing of when you say, you don't want to seem exclusive or exclusionary, excuse me, that's very true. And I think as a creative person who's like, I want to make things and I want to get it in the hands of as many people as possible, I want to affect as many people's lives as possible, it seems counterintuitive to say, but I'm going to focus on this segment. And
Mhm.
yet the importance of what you underscored of like, if you're speaking to everyone, you're really speaking to no one,
Yeah.
because we need to use language and phrases and things that help people go, oh, when they're saying that, they're talking to me. Like I
Mhm.
resonate with what that person is saying right now. And then making the connection with whatever it is that you do, so that people see there is a place for that in their lives, and that is solving a problem or meeting a need. It's not simply just selling something for the sake of selling something. It's not strong arming, right?
Exactly.
And so I think, that's an important thing, and underscoring that AI can help you in this process, but yet not to think that it's going to give you the whole thing with a bow on top, right?
Yes. And something else to keep in mind when you are feeling like this might be restricting your opportunity is that as you become more successful, that is naturally going to expand out. So sometimes people are buying things not because they're your target customer, but because they aspire to be like your target customer,
Mm.
or there's a facet of them that relates to that in some way. So let's take something non-creative. Like, I don't know why this is just always the thing that pops into my mind when I'm talking about this is, let's say that you are selling hiking boots and they're highly technical and they are meant for people who are spending weeks in the backcountry where the they need to be going over all sorts of terrain, and they're going to be in all types of climates, and they need to be able to rely on these shoes, because if something happens to their boots when they're out in the middle of nowhere, then they're going to have a really difficult journey back to civilization. Now, not everybody that buys those boots necessarily falls into that category. There are going to be people that have never hiked a day in their lives that are
Yeah.
like, you know what? My family's going to the Grand Canyon and I want a pair of hiking boots, because they want to channel that persona of the person that wants that. They either because they want the best, or they want to embody in their mind, they love the aspirational idea of this really rugged, outdoorsy person who can navigate any scenario. And those boots might just sit in their closet, but they bought those because it met some kind of emotional need. And so that's what can happen. And then as you find more success, that can expand out, but it also doesn't have to. If you find a segment of of people that love what you're doing, you're probably still going to have far more people that you could serve than you ever serve. This is a big
Mhm.
world.
Yes.
And especially with the internet and being not restricted by physical location, there's so much opportunity out there that will forever remain untapped, most likely.
Yeah, yeah, valid points of that. Yeah, and it's so true. With when you were saying that about people getting it and then wanting it to be their experience, I'm envisioning someone just going to the local park and going like, I'm not climbing mountains, I'm not going on these expeditions, but I'm in my local park and I'm like sporting these these hiking boots with the best of them.
Exactly. Or like my favorite influencer on Instagram says how much they love these boots. And I've always imagined one day that I would be spending more time outside. So I'm going to buy these to inspire myself to get outside more,
Yeah,
even if they are just using them to walk around their neighborhood.
yeah, yeah. So as we're talking about all this stuff of, kind of knowing your market, understanding the language, and knowing really how to market yourself, your services. In terms of your client base, like, is there a certain type of client that always seems to come to you, or is it like across industries? What does that look like?
Because we work primarily with e-commerce businesses and we are so specialized in what we do, the profile is more varied than I think other types of businesses, because in some ways, rather than specializing around a customer type, we specialize around a very specific service that we can provide to a range of different customers. So it's still being very focused and narrow in what we do. And so we've worked with everyone from new businesses launching their very first product, all the way up to large multinational companies that don't have the expertise or the hands internally to be able to manage those projects. And so it's quite varied. But I would say that the commonality that they share is a recognition and the understanding of and placing importance on really developing out a strong brand identity and recognizing that that is going to be their one of their biggest strategic assets in not only finding success on Amazon, but really finding success wherever they choose to sell their products, be it TikTok Shop or in retail or on their own website.
Yeah. Are there certain misconceptions that you would say are common with people who come to you and say like, hey, I want to get into e-commerce, or I need help with this? Certain things that they've fabricated, told themselves, certain narratives or things that you feel like you encounter a lot?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I see that really hinders people's potential for growth. And I think that this is actually true beyond e-commerce. This is just the biggest thing that I see across the board is people will look at what the top businesses in their category are doing, and they will take that as signals that they just need to do that too. And they will make decisions about how to position themselves and how to market themselves and how to brand themselves by trying to maybe not always copy, but be heavily inspired by those large companies. And that is in the same way that not being clear about who your target customer is, and then having that really dilute your ability to drive connection. That same thing is going to happen when you are emulating your top competitors, except with one even bigger issue being that if there are already these big names that you are competing against, they're established, they're well known, they're maybe the solution that your customers are already using. They perhaps can offer more competitive pricing because they have a better economy of scale. They have more positive reviews. You know, they're winning across all of these things. If you just come in and say, "Hey, why not choose us? We're the same thing, but you just don't know us yet." What would give somebody a compelling reason to choose you?
Mm. Yeah.
It's really putting you into a position, if you do that, of needing to either price yourself cheaper and then hoping that somebody will buy you because you're a cheaper option, or needing to spend a lot of money and trying to outmarket. But if they're a larger company, they're probably always going to have a bigger budget than you.
Right.
And so if you want to be competitive, you actually need to really lean into what makes you different, because it's not just about getting people to choose you. It's about giving people a reason to not choose the other options that they have. And people are always, it's so rare to be offering something truly unique that there wouldn't be an alternative option for. And so with that in mind, that same work that you did about developing out your customer avatar, you also need to do for your own brand, and really get incredibly clear about who you want to be as a business. And it doesn't have to all be related to the product or the service that you're selling. It can be a core set of values or interests or perspective, or even influenced by that customer that isn't really being served by anybody else in the market, and why it is that you feel so attracted to wanting to serve that particular kind of customer. And that is where you're able to then begin to truly be competitive against these larger companies, because you are offering something different and you are giving people a reason why they should do business with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems counterintuitive when you first hear it to be like, oh, well, I should be looking at these other people who are really being successful. But I think also the fact is that sometimes there are variables that we're not privy to that are really important in the mix. And we can't say that we're going to simply emulate what they do, how they do it, because we don't have the same resources. We don't have the same, we're not the same entity. And so to your point, knowing yourself, knowing and magnifying that difference, which may seem uncomfortable at first, I think is the thing that actually is your superpower and gives you, there are so many people that I've come across where maybe the product or service they have is pretty standard and you could find it elsewhere, but the story behind it,
Yes.
right? Like why they're doing what they're doing, like you said, the value set, or they had a certain experience that was the catalyst moment for them. And that's the thing that actually attracts you to them. And it goes, oh, well, that seems to be this type of person that I really want to work with because I feel like something about them resonates with me. Yes. And that connection's made. And then you're going down the rabbit hole of what else does this person do? How else can this person help me? How can I develop this relationship more? And we can't offer that to people if we don't even know that ourselves, right? And so taking the time to unpack that, and I think so much of the stuff it can seem at face value like so heavy and so clunky to even get a hold of some things. But once we start to talk about what this is beyond even just categories and people talking about brands all the time and brand identity and all these terms that sometimes can seem very intimidating. But really, when we get down to it, there's a very important need why we're talking about this stuff and unpacking it to the level where it makes it accessible to people. And conversations like this, I think, are truly helpful because then it makes it like, oh, I can do this. Yeah. Even me at this level, just starting out, trying to figure some things out. Yes, there's a lot of work and a lot of things that I need to focus on. But at least if I pick this right now and I focus and get some traction, then I'll start to see some results of it. So thank you for this kind of conversation. And I love that it's so aligned with you wanting to, you having followed your curiosity, learned this information, and now turning around and handing it to other people to help people. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I think one thing that's really important about this work when you are a creative entrepreneur is that you are not your business, but your business is a facet of who you are. Because oftentimes when we are creatives in business, we are part of what people are purchasing, whether it's something that we've made or them wanting to tap into our experiences. And so it requires a lot of bravery and courage to do this work. Putting yourself out there in that way is not easy. But if you're feeling drawn to it, then it's worth exploring. I've truly felt like for myself, being in business has been the best self-development experience.
Absolutely.
That I could have ever asked for because it just shines this spotlight on things of like, okay, time to confront that.
Yes. Totally.
You don't have the places to hide like you might if you're in a more traditional work setting. And so it makes it harder, but it also makes it, at least for myself, it's been a far more fulfilling journey and an adventure than I think it would have been otherwise.
Yes, absolutely. As we talk about sharing stories and making connection points, if people want to connect with you and your business, where can people go to do that and how can they do that?
Marketingbyemma.com is our website, and that contains all the contact details that you might want, be it email or contact form or phone numbers. And then if you were interested in these topics that we were talking about customer avatars and brand identity and some of these different pretty meaty topics, and you want to go deeper, I also have a YouTube channel, which is marketingbyemma.com. And I have videos about all of those topics where you can go deeper and also learn some of the specific steps and questions and things to do in order to be able to build out these different assets and concepts and ideas that you can use to influence all of these other decisions that you're going to be making in your business.
Love it. Yeah. So this podcast was pretty much like here's the hors d'oeuvres. And if you want some more, the appetizers, and if you want more of the full meal, then we can dive in. And that's a great resource for people to be able to learn more and have some specific next steps. So thank you for that. I want to thank you so much for our time today, for you sharing not only your story, but your knowledge, your experience, and your just ability to help people step into some of these places where there are gaps. That's a tremendous service. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting me. I loved being able to reflect on my own experience and try to extract some morsels that may be helpful to others along their own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.